This is Root Literacy Design, where we share stories, tips, and tools for educators implementing evidence based literacy. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so we can keep helping educators like you.
Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at different types of texts, authentic versus predictable, leveled, decodable, and we're going to be talking about what types of text students should be reading, what types of texts you should be reading to them. This video is great for educators as well as for parents, or any family members or people who are working with students learning to read. And so feel free to share this video with whomever, might find it helpful. So I'm on rootliteracydesign.com/free-tools page. This is our website. So if you scroll to the bottom and select this last hyperlink right here, text type overview chart, that's what we're going to be looking at right now. So in this chart, it's a brief overview of different types of text: authentic, predictable, controlled vocabulary, decodable, high frequency, and leveled. So we're going to go through each one. I'm going to show you examples. I'm going to show you resources and places to find books for your students or for your kiddos that you're working with. And hopefully you'll leave with a better understanding of how you should be reading to your student and what your student should be reading. And this is for all ages that we're going to go through, so hang in there with me. So first, we're going to look at authentic texts. So authentic texts are books that are written for no purpose other than to entertain you, provide you with information. You're going to find these mostly, adult books. If you go into the adult section of the bookstore or the library, these are not toyed with in any way. They just exist for you to entertain you or for you to learn about a topic. Predictable texts are like brown bear, what do you see? It's repetitive. You're able to predict what's going to happen on the next page. Another example of a predictable text would be green eggs and ham. Um, my mom my mom picked up on the fact that I actually wasn't able to read when I was in first grade because she would read Green Eggs and Ham to me almost daily because she would say, Heather, what do you want me to read to you? And I would say Green Eggs and Ham. It was my favorite book. And I would sit there and I would just recite it with her. I actually memorized the book because I'd heard it so many times, just like you can memorize a song or parts of a movie, just from hearing it. And so if your student or child is jumping in and saying brown bear, what do you see with you? Don't be fooled. They're not reading. Most of the time, they're not reading. They are just, remembering and reciting along with you. So one thing you can do to try to figure out is my student or child reading this or are they memorizing it? Is just open the book to any page. And this is what my mom did to me actually, which was ingenious, and just point to any word, but do not pick the first page, but point to any word in the book and just say, what is that word? And do that on multiple pages in multiple spots. And if the student or child is able to say the word to you, then they're probably reading. But if they have no idea what the word is, they are most likely just saying the text with you. So I'm sorry to my friends who have excitedly texted me when their child is like 3 or 3.5 and said they can read. They're not. They've never been taught how, don't even know the alphabet yet in most cases. And so they're just, reciting with you just like they would a song because they've heard you say it so many times. Okay, so let's go back to our chart here. Okay, so that's predictable text. So those are written to be fun and to be engaging. There's nothing wrong with them, but those are texts that we should be reading to students who are still learning how to read. It's not that they should be able to read them on their own, even though they're pretty simplistic. The words themselves, they're not able to break down and decode yet. So let's look at this. This is the University of Florida Literacy Institute scope and sequence. So this is designed to teach students how to read. This is their curriculum for kindergarten through second grade. And so if you look at it quickly with me, lesson one, they're learning A says ah. These slash marks mean that the sound is within. So M is saying the sound S is saying the sound S, T is saying the sound T. So by lesson four, students are able to read at, sat, mat, and that's it. right? And then if we teach them P says P, now they can read pat. If we teach them F says F, now they could read fat. Now when they know I says I, they could read fit, pit, mit, sit. All kinds of words are starting to unlock for them. But we are explicitly teaching students what letters represent what sounds, and we're teaching them those sounds. And so if we go back to, even though this text is simplistic, the brown bear, what do you see? Even in the title, we have B-R-O-W saying ow and then N. OW saying ow isn't learned until much farther along in a normal scope and sequence. So students are learning that usually at the end of first grade or even in second grade. And so, yeah, that's somewhere over here. Let's see if I can find it for us. OW saying O and OW saying ow right here, lesson 96. So even though Brown Bear, what do you see, feels like a simplistic book, which it's meant to be because it's predictable and fun, it's supposed to be entertaining. You can use it to bond with your student or child, like singing it, Brown Bear, what do you see? But they can't read it on their own yet. They're not going to learn OW says ow until lesson 96. So I think a lot of times we get confused because we're going to get to what types of text students can be reading as they're learning how to read, as they're in a scope and sequence like this one, but they're called decodable texts. And so predictable texts, we should be using for read alouds only. They're not for decodable practice because students are facing words that have concepts that they don't know yet. And so we don't want to encourage them guessing rather than sounding out words. So we just want to, there's nothing wrong with them. We just want to make sure that we as readers are reading it to students who are learning how to read, not asking them to read it to us. Controlled vocabulary texts, they limit the number of words and repeat them frequently. So books like Go Dog Go, new words are learned primarily through memorization. So you're helping to build a sight vocabulary, but again, they're not meant for students who are learning how to decode. They're full of words that they can't read yet, even though, again, they seem simplistic. The focus is on memorization, not on applying phonics rules. So here's an example of Go Dog Go. And if we look at the first few pages, here we go. So yes, it looks like they could read dog and big dog, but now we have little. So even though this seems simplistic because there's two words on there, students are not learning how to read a word that has a consonant, an L, and an E at the end until much farther along in a scope and sequence. So again, that's usually at the end of first grade or even part of second grade, but that is not something that they should be expected to read when they're just learning how to read and they're on this column here, right? So yeah, it's good to be aware of. So the consonant LE is right here, lesson 75. So they won't be able to read that word little until they've learned all of these concepts over here. And it's also a two-syllable word, little. So it's much more complex. We want to start with one-syllable words when they're over here. So again, don't let it trick you. It's found in the children's section of the library and in the children's section of the bookstore, but these are books that you should be reading to your student, not them to you. Look at this one. It has black, so CK saying the sound k, WH, it's a digraph. It's two letters making one sound. We have a vowel consonant E. The E is silent. It's making the I say its name. Let's try to figure out where those concepts are in our scope and sequence. So vowel consonant E is being taught here, starting at lesson 54. Students are learning the digraph WH saying W at lesson 50. CK saying the K sound is lesson 44. So it's just being very aware that so far, just in the first few pages of Go Dogs Go, until your student is all the way over here at 75, they wouldn't be able to read it. And it's not that great of a book for them to practice decoding either, because we want them to be facing these words many times so that they're being mapped in the brain. The brain is learning what letters represent what sounds. And this isn't good practice for that because there aren't many of them. Okay, so I'm gonna get out of that. So we want them in decodable text as they're learning how to read. So let's talk about decodable text. So they contain a high amount of words that are phonetically regular that students can read. They follow a scope and sequence such as this one. So UFly has made a whole list of they've made their own decodables that they give to teachers as part of their curriculum, but they also have made a list of all these other companies that are aligning with their scope and sequence. And so we can find them by going to UFly Toolbox. Once we're in UFly's Toolbox, we click on the Decodable Text Guide. And right here are, I mean, there's so many. It's in alphabetical order for us. Here's the text that UFly put together. They also have theirs for free. These are all of the other companies that UFly has gone through and vetted themselves and said that which books align to what lesson. So I know that lesson 23, my student could read Dog Is, Pig Was Hot, or Pigs Fit from this company, Express Readers. So this is really, really helpful. And this is how we can use this resource too to start building a decodable text library where we know at what point do I give decodable text to my students. This is all aligned for you. So it gives you the title and the company and what lesson that you can start giving it here on the left. Okay. So let's go back. So let's look at a few other decodable texts. I want to show you a resource as well, put together by the Reading League. And so they have also gone through a bunch of different curriculum and companies for us, and they have put what books are appropriate for what ages, which is so helpful because we know that older students are still learning how to read too. There's actually many adults still learning how to read. So looking, even though the scope and sequence from UFly that we've been looking at together is intended for K-2, there are many older students who are learning from this curriculum specifically or from another curriculum. And so they just have a slightly different scope and sequence, but they're still teaching these concepts. It's just appearing in a different order. And so adults as well. Let's remember all of our adults who are still learning how to read and they're using us following a scope and sequence. So what what the Reading League has done is they have put together by ages, which I find so incredible. So for young readers, grades K-2, we have all these different companies that we could start looking into. Scroll down here, we have older readers, grades 3-8, all of these companies that are meant for them. We have all ages listed here, teens and adults. And then there's even some coming out with Spanish, and then there's decodable games that are coming out. So this is just a phenomenal resource. So it's the readingleague.org/decodable-text-sources. So yes, a lot of the decodables I have found is just these two places, the UFly list here and then the Reading League's list here. So what's the main difference here? Why does it matter to have books for K-2 or upper grades? If they're all learning how to read, why do we have these differences? We're going to dive in and look at some together next. Okay, let's begin with some of my favorite decodable texts for younger readers. These are called the Express Readers. Now, I've had some teachers feel iffy about the picture quality, that it looks like somebody, you can actually like see pencil marks, colored pencil marks, and it doesn't look too professional. I gotta tell you, the students love these books, and the younger students love these books because they feel like they could do it. They feel like they could be the illustrator. And so it just uplifts them and they get so excited. And there's this cutesy little thing where this fly appears over and over, and they have such a fun time trying to find the fly that appears. But you'll see that the Express readers follow a scope and sequence. This one's focusing on these concepts, these digraphs, this trigraph. It's got ED saying that sound. There's short vowels in here. And so there isn't any words that the student can't read. It's telling you what concepts are there, and you can just align it with your scope and sequence, and then you know when to pick up this book and when your students can start to read it and practice the concepts that they're mastering. Another company that I really like, let's look at these. So there's a lot of nonfiction books. Let me show you the back here. So this is our company. And there's a lot of nonfiction and fiction. So I'm going to start by showing you some of the nonfiction. So again, these ones specifically with the from this company with the green on the side are 100% aligned with UFly, which is incredible. So they tell you what concept is being there on the back, but you can find these also on UFly's decodable text guide that I showed you before. What I do is I do Command F and then I just type in a strong heart. I put in the title of the book and then it brings me to it and I can see a strong heart is lesson 96. And here, so you can see the company because I don't know if it came through, if it was clear what the company is. So this is the Developing Decoders company. So right here. So while these texts are not appropriate to give to older students, these texts are. So they're filled with real pictures and students of all ages. And the other nice thing about them too is they're starting to get into text features and text structures. You can show them table of contents and start teaching them about like glossaries, that sort of thing. They've got titles going on here. You can start teaching students about those. They have captions going with the real pictures. So these are appropriate to give to older students. I'll open a couple more so you can see them. A strong heart. Again, real pictures, real people. Okay. So here's a few more by this company. Red Planet, Time to Vote. So these are the types of texts that as your students are learning how to read, you want them to be reading. Okay. But some other ones that are really great, these are foundations. So like these going back to, the audience, these are not appropriate for older students. They're more for younger students. But this is from Foundations. There's all different ones that they have. Job in a Lab. Another company that's really great is called Silisense. So all of these are decodable and you can figure out where they are in your scope and sequence by looking at the concepts that they cover and then looking at your scope and sequence. So this one has some of our digraphs as CK and SH, and we have the ED suffix going on here. So these are not for older students, but they're great for younger readers. And there are nonfiction sets as well. So we have fiction and nonfiction ones by Silisense. Another company that's great is Wholephonics. So Wholephonics will tell you too what concept is being taught on the back. Again, not for older students, but just so you can see what's nice about, you start to see the differences too. Silisense has not as many words on a page, but Wholephonics is starting to get into more of the feel of a book, authentic book, starting to feel more like a chapter book, more words on the page. So students are getting tons of practice with concepts that they're learning and learning how to apply them to read words. They have all kinds of books here. Here's another one by Wholephonics. I love these sets too, the Little Learners Big World books. They have fiction and nonfiction. So here's one of their nonfiction books about sloths. I was using this with a fourth grader last year. He loved it. Did not feel babied by it because it's full of big actual pictures. So it's really great. You are learning about sloths too. In the bin, they've got another one by this company, Little Learners Big World. So all the concepts that are being taught are on the back. It's showing you these are the letters that they know at this stage. At this stage, we're covering these concepts here with Y, R, E, Q, U, Z. Digraphs and trigraphs are coming in at stage 6. Vowel teams are starting to come in at stage 7. So it breaks it down for you and you just pick it up in the scope and sequence. These are great for older students. This is story shares. So I'll open a couple of these for you to see. This is starting to feel more for middle and high school students. This is who they're intended for. So we've got all different types of text structures and text features going on here as well. Real people, feels more like a chapter book, and it's thick. You can see it's very thick, much bigger than the ones for younger students that we've looked at together so far. So those are decodable texts, and there's all these different sets from this company. Story shares. Show you a couple more. So this is what I mean by all the different text features too. We've got a heading up here, and then we've got titles, and then they're pulling in what looks like a post from online and people commenting on it. And then there's text over here on the left that feels like it's still part of the story. So there's all different things going on there for students to learn even more than just sounding out words. You can start diving into text features and structures too. All right, so now that we looked at decodable text, let's look at our last two quickly here, high frequency word text and leveled text. High frequency word text might say something like sight word stories or something like that, or I've even seen them where they do say high frequency words. And so these are not meant to be decodable. They are promoting memorization, and they're looking at, teaching students what certain words are. They might put them in bold to flag them for you, but they're not teaching, there's no rhyme or reason here. They don't align to a scope and sequence. So this is kind of like the work we did when we looked at Go Dog Go. That is not funny. Well, students can decode that word. You have to wait in the scope and sequence until they learn Y says E, and you start teaching them how to decode a two-syllable word. They don't need to be memorizing that word. The word find, they also don't need to be memorizing because that's completely decodable. And in the scope and sequence, you would start to see when you're learning IND says IND. Um, and so there's not really a point to these. They're not going to help students who are learning how to read because they're full of words that they can't decode yet, and there's not much practice in there for them. So even looking at owl, we have OW vowel team saying ow, we have OO saying ooh, that's another vowel team, we have AY saying A. And if we remember from our scope and sequence, those are concepts that are coming much, much later. And so while this looks like it is for a beginning reader, there's not much in here that they can actually read. We would have to read this to them because it's not decodable. They haven't learned the concepts within it yet. So the last style we're going to look at is, these books are all over bookstores and even in our libraries, and they look like they're supposed to be for our students who are learning how to read. And they even have levels for us. And these are our leveled texts that we're going to end by talking about. So the I can read books that say level 1, and then they tell you what grade it is. Oh boy, let's look at the title alone. So based on what we've been learning so far, HORSE. OR is an R-controlled syllable type that's saying or. Hairy, that's very complex. Y is saying E. There's an apostrophe S on it. We're learning two-syllable word there that we have to learn how to break down. OO is saying ooh. All of these concepts are coming at the back end of that scope and sequence that we looked at earlier. And so there is no way a preschool student would be able to read this book. So if we open it up, we'll see even more evidence that this is not what they could read on their own if they're living in the world of reading short vowel words and one-syllable words at the start of kindergarten, which is where they should be. They haven't learned I consonant E, I saying I yet. They haven't learned how to read circle with that consonant LE we looked at before with the word little in Go Dog Go. They haven't learned C says the S sound next to I. They haven't learned IR says So all those things happen much later. So there's again, nothing wrong with these books. I remember even having these books read to me and enjoying them greatly, but don't be fooled by this. Just pretend it's not there. Don't put these in the hand of your students and say, these are things you should be reading on your own. If they're learning how to read themselves. These are books that we want to read to them because they're full of concepts they can't read yet. So here's another example. I can read phonics, meat biscuit. In the title alone, EE is saying E, and we have UI saying I. This is a two-syllable word. They can't read that yet. If students know E says eh, if they've learned the short sound, they're gonna sound this out and go et. Et. They're not gonna know says E unless we explicitly teach it to them. Um, so the whole thing is filled with all these words that students can't read yet. However, it looks like because it's simplistic, they should be able to. We have the vowel team UE saying ooh and blue, and ALL saying all, and we have that long vowel sound I and find. Let's try to find some of these. We had UI saying, oh, UI vowel team, that's over here, lesson 91. Learning AY, like in play, that's lesson 84. These are not taught until about second grade. And as we know with decodables, if we are giving them decodables um, like these, they're going to be filled with so many more words that they can read. Look at how many more words are on a page for them to practice and read versus meat biscuit, where there's only a few words on each page, so it's not as helpful. So other ones we'll look at very quickly. National Geographic, pre-reader, trot pony, gotta know why it says E. All ponies eat grass. We have a vowel team here. We have this is very complex. This is why changing to I and adding a suffix. So all of that is learned much later. So again, nothing wrong with these. Just read them to your student. Don't think that because it says pre-reader or level 1 that your student should be able to read them. Here's another example, level 3, full of just any word. I don't know why this is called level 3. I mean, there is no rhyme or reason to this. It's just full of all kinds of words. Your student couldn't counter anything here. And so we just have to make sure that we're reading it to them if they're still learning how to read themselves. Once your students know how to read, they can read all of these. There's nothing that they wouldn't be able to read. So all of these, sometimes levels appear as letters too, level P, level J, level O, level I. So we just want to be looking out for these. They'll even say that they're a leveled reader. And just make sure that we're reading it to them instead. And that if they're learning how to read, they're getting decodables so that they can get lots of practice. Okay, thank you for joining me today. I hope this video was helpful.